My son is my pride and joy. He's amazing. He just has a little issue surrounding learning. For many years, I would go and I would challenge the Board of Ed because something wasn't right. His IEPs kept saying the same thing. There was little to no improvement at all. They didn't know what it was.
I had a hard time learning. I just didn't feel normal. Sometimes I don't even want to go to school.
It wasn't until we got into Advocates for Children till someone really heard us and helped me to help my son.
For 50 years, Advocates for Children has been the go-to organization in New York City for families who have children who are struggling in the New York City public schools, not getting the support they need and not getting the services and the support they have a right to receive. We do tons of work on behalf of students with disabilities, and that work really permeates all of our projects. But we also have projects specializing in immigrant students and English language learners, in students in the foster care system and the juvenile and criminal justice systems, in students who are homeless, projects focusing on early childhood education for the youngest children, and on older students, students who are overage, undercredited, and really need specialized support to get through high school.
Advocates for Children is the gold standard in this work. They work with the most vulnerable. The strength of Advocates for Children is understanding the strengths of their families.
Advocates has changed thousands of lives, there's no question about it. But I think the secret sauce of Advocates for Children is that it's changed the system.
All of their policies are really informed by the lived experiences of New Yorkers. And that equips them to be among the strongest advocates in this city to really fight for the needs of New Yorkers.
My wife and I raised a child with special needs. We, two lawyers, were outwitted, outmatched by the Department of Education. And so all these things require an advocate that is prepared to be completely dogged. And that's what Advocates for Children does.
Our lawyer at Advocates for Children started to contact different agencies to help give him the proper evaluations that he needed. He was actually diagnosed with dyslexia. To know that something is wrong with your child and you don't know what it is heartbreaking. To have someone come and help you and really care, it was a great feeling.
Advocates for Children is an army of warriors that have been fighting for students and their families for 50 years.
In the 1970s, 49 out of 50 states still allowed schools to exclude students with disabilities from education completely. A woman named Miriam Thompson started a group in Queens that was a volunteer organization that worked literally out of her kitchen. What they did was help individual families whose children were having trouble in the New York City public schools. Around the same time, Bill Jasinski and Jane Stern got together and they formed another organization primarily focused on the education needs of students who had social and emotional challenges.
My mother was always concerned with injustice. She saw law as a form of advocacy. This translated into local advocacy, advocacy around her own children, but very quickly into this connection with Bill.
Bill was very committed to kids that had serious problems in school. She and Bill were collaborating on these issues, and then they continued to work together.
Miriam Thompson and Bill Jasinski met at a community meeting and they decided they could be more powerful if they joined forces. They changed the name to Advocates for Children of New York, and the rest is history.
We were in a storefront in Long Island City with the N train going by and rattling your desk occasionally. And yet every day people came in and did amazing things. And that idealism continues to animate Advocates for Children, but it was there at its inception.
Over the past 50 years, there have been so many times when AFC has risen to meet incredibly daunting challenges. Back in the 70s, we took advantage of this new federal right to education for students with disabilities, and we worked to make that a reality for students on the ground. We fought for regulations and systems at the local level to implement the federal law and make sure that special education services would be delivered to students. And today, we've served 500,000 students with disabilities. In New York City, 100,000 students a year experience homelessness. These are students tremendously in need of support. When we saw that the number had gone up to 100,000 students in a year, we started publicizing it more aggressively and really coming up with an agenda to push the New York City public school system.
I had the chance to work very closely with Advocates for Children when I was at the Department of Education. And they came with a vision and a plan about students in temporary housing. They also came with support and always believed that at the end of the day, it was about making sure that kids and families got what they deserved.
I regret to have to announce that as of tomorrow, our public schools will be closed.
Early on in the pandemic, as the school went to remote learning, Advocates for Children jumped in immediately.
From day one, staff got on the phone and started calling all of our existing clients and saying, how can I help you? What do you need? I'm talking about attorneys who developed Google Classroom guides in Spanish. Staff were hardworking, they were creative, and they were relentless.
That ability to pivot and deal with the crisis to make sure that our clients were still being well represented and still getting what they were entitled to was an incredibly proud moment for the organization to make sure our clients were well taken care of.
What makes Milton special is his loyalty. He always thinks in the other person beside him. The difficulty in school began when we arrived from Brazil. That's when we noticed that something was different with Milton.
He was in the second grade with the level of kindergarten. I went to the school and I requested the IP.
They didn't put in the IP what Milton needs. They put in the IP what they have.
Yes, nothing. The teacher said, Natalia, you did not fight alone. I sent the email to Advocate for Children and somebody called me. I remember that she said, you are not alone anymore. Our lawyer for Advocates for Children is Nicole Warlick.
I remember when she go with us to the IP meeting, they surprised the school.
Because before they were ignoring us. But when Nicole went in the room, we feel like we are strong. She fought like a mother. Everything that happened in his life now, everything that made him better now is because of her. Advocates for Children changed her life.
I'm doing way better in school. I actually have a teacher that actually understands me. I feel very proud.
He's like a butterfly. His possibilities are limitless.
The fabric of New York is made up of our graduates. Every kid that we help, and there are legions of them, contributes to the vibrancy and the success of New York City.
The work that Advocates for Children does is just so monumental because it's changing the education system.
What AFC does, it's really all about opportunity. Opportunity to get an appropriate education, opportunity to have a productive life as an adult, opportunity for the whole city to do better for its people. My hope is that in the next 50 years, AFC will continue to do all the great work that it's doing, but we'll do it for a lot more people.
AFC's core belief that all students in New York City have the right to an education that prepares them to maximize their potential as adults, we have not strayed from that for 50 years. That relentless, passionate, do anything to help families spirit that I imagine existed around Miriam Thompson's kitchen table, you will still find in our office today. It is a real privilege to be able to lead an organization that has such an impact on actual children and families on the ground. We've really made a difference for families in New York City.